This is the most heavily anticipated sneaker release of 2024. What's up everybody, I'm Seth Fowler and today I'm reviewing the upcoming Air Jordan 4 BRED Reimagined. We've pretty much known about this release since March of last year, 2023. It was not a very well kept secret by Jordan Brand, but it's a shoe that I think a lot of people were looking forward to with some apprehension. And the reason for that is because just like with some of the other reimagined Jordan sneakers that have released over the last couple years, Jordan Brand decided to change up one of the main materials on this original Air Jordan 4 colorway pretty dramatically. And I mean, let's be real, even when Jordan Brand just changes one tiny detail on any of their OG releases, people tend to lose their minds. I hate to admit it, but myself included, the reimagined Air Jordan 1 Royals that just recently released at the end of last year, I didn't like that much, but that's because they changed the upper of the shoe from leather to suede, which to be fair is one of the larger changes that they've made on recent sneaker releases. And I don't know if it's just because I've been trained to like leather Air Jordan 1s because that's all I've really been seeing for the last 30 plus years of my existence, but there was something about that shoe that seemed off. But oddly enough, that's almost the exact same change that they made on this upcoming Air Jordan 4 BRED Reimagined, except instead of switching out the leather for suede, they switched out the suede for leather. And for some reason, even though it's a very similar change, I like this shoe a lot more than I like the Royal Reimagines, and I think that's the case for most people. It might just be the times that we're in right now, but for some reason, when it comes to Jordan sneakers, people just seem to prefer tumbled leather over pretty much any other material. And that's probably the reason why this shoe is so incredibly hyped right now, because even though it's one of the larger reimagined changes, it adds material that a lot of people love on an OG Air Jordan 4 colorway. So in today's video, we're gonna dive deep into the upcoming Air Jordan 4 BRED Reimagined and find out whether this material change makes the shoe or maybe ruins the shoe, how this shoe fits, and also the release and how difficult this shoe is going to be to get. And actually, why don't we start with that? Let's talk about when you can grab the Air Jordan 4 BRED Reimagined. So for at least the last decade, All-Star Weekend has not only been huge for basketball fans, but also sneaker fans. And that's because usually during that time, all of the big sneaker brands drop some of their biggest releases of the year. And at least for Jordan Brand, it looks like 2024 is no different because on Saturday, February 17th, we're getting the BRED 4 Reimagined, which, as you probably already know, is sort of a twist on one of the most iconic sneaker colorways of all time. And the good news is, if you're trying to grab a pair of these, not only will they come in full family sizing, which means you can outfit the entire family in the same sneakers, they also should be somewhat readily available. They're not going to be not limited, like they're still going to be difficult to get. They won't be anywhere near as limited as a pair of like Travis Scott Jordans or really any other collaboration Jordan. The problem is that they will be incredibly popular, so they're still going to be difficult to get even though there should be a lot of pairs floating around. But hey, if you are able to grab a pair for retail, you'll be shelling out $215, which is not cheap, but it's also not overly expensive for this sneaker. And actually, if you're like me and you want to grab a pair early, I've made sure to leave a link to this sneaker through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen, and then after the sneaker releases, you can still grab them through that link. But if you guys want to grab them like a month and a half early, that's the link to click. Even though this shoe is officially slated to release on February 17th, 2024, there are rumors currently swirling that this shoe will have some sort of early access drop on the sneakers app in the next couple weeks. I don't know if those are true, but that's what I'm hearing. So it is looking like you will have a couple chances to grab these sneakers for retail, and hopefully when they do officially release and most likely sell out, they shouldn't be that much over retail on the resale market. They might be, but my guess is probably only $50 to $100. But really, who knows? It's like the stock market. No one actually knows what's going to happen in terms of sneaker resale prices. Before we dive any deeper into the sneaker itself, let's first take a look at the box. And what's cool about this box is that it seems like not only did Jordan Brand reimagine the sneakers themselves, but they also slightly reimagined the box. And I mean, right off the bat, when you compare it to a standard Air Jordan 4 box, you'll notice that they basically just flipped all the colors. The base pattern on the top of the box is usually what you'd find on the bottom of the box and is made up of cement gray and black splatter print. Obviously, in the center, you've got the iconic Jumpman logo in red with the white flight text, and then on the sides of the edges of the top of the box, that was like a really long-winded way to describe the sides of the top, you've got the Nike Air logo printed in red. Then it looks like the rest of the box is just kind of black. So really, it seems like all they did was just flip the colors on the top of the box, which kind of symbolizes the flipping of materials on the sneaker, at least that's my guess. But then we get to the front of the box where, of course, you have the size tag. Now, as you probably noticed, this is a size 10. I'm a size 9. I usually rock size 9s. Unfortunately, the size 10 was the only one that was reasonably priced on GOAT for me to grab to give you guys an earlier review, so that's why I had to go with a size 10. It was a difference of like $1,000. It was wild, so I wasn't going to spend $1,000 extra to get a size 9 when I could just wait a couple weeks and get it for like $400. So because of that, what I'm going to do to give you guys accurate sizing information later on in the video is compare this size 10, the size 10 BRED Reimagined, to a pair of Fire Red 4s in a size 10, which I actually also own in a size 9. For me, the 2020 Fire Red 4s fit true to size in a size 9, so I know how they feel in a size 9. I also know how they feel in a size 10, so I'm gonna try these guys on, try these guys on. These guys feel exactly the same. I've already tried them on, and give you guys sizing advice based off that. And actually, I'm realizing now, because I said that, you guys probably already know how these fit, if you listen to what I was saying, but we'll talk about it again later on in the video. But all that size and complexity out of the way, let's talk about the colorway of the shoe. The official colorway of the sneaker is black fire red cement gray. And unfortunately inside the box, you do not get a second set of laces, so we won't be talking about those because you just don't get an extra set. But let's be honest, are you really gonna switch out the laces in your BRED 4s? They gotta be black laces in my opinion. I mean, you can rock them with white, but black's the way to go. So I'm not mad at the fact they didn't give us an extra set, but if you want an extra set, you can grab them probably on Amazon or somewhere like that. But now we get back to the sneakers themselves, the BRED 4 Reimagined. So I've got to be honest, when I first heard about the leaks of this shoe and the fact that this shoe would come in all leather instead of nubuck, I was worried, as I'm sure a lot of you were, because the original shoe came in nubuck. That's just how the BRED 4s have always looked. And I mean, the BRED 4s are one of the most iconic sneakers of all time, not just because the colorway looked amazing, but also because of what Michael Jordan did in the shoe. Most notably, the BRED 4 was the shoe that Michael Jordan wore during the iconic shot. Shot, of course, being the game winner that Michael Jordan made back in 1989 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. BRED Jordan 4s was also the first colorway of the Air Jordan 4s to feature the flight text underneath the Jumpman on the tongue, which now every pair of Jordan 4s has. And it's truly one of the most iconic sneakers of all time. As far as releases, the BRED 4s first retroed in 1999 for the 10th anniversary of the Air Jordan 4s. Then they retroed again in 2008 in the Countdown Pack alongside the Air Jordan 19. And for those of you that don't know, the Countdown Pack was two pairs of sneakers whose numbers added up to 23. So with the Air Jordan 4, you had 19 because that added up to 23, and there was other Countdown Packs that included sneakers that also added up to the number 23, of course, Michael Jordan's number. The big change on the Countdown Pack pair of Air Jordan 4 Breads was that they changed up the Nike Air branding on the heel tab to Jumpman brand. And that Jumpman branding was the same branding that was used on the next retro of the shoe that happened in 2012. And then of course we have the retro that you all probably remember, the 2019 pair, which switched back from the Jumpman heel tab to the Nike Air heel tab. And up until now, the heel tab was really the only major change that took place on the retros of the Air Jordan 4 Bread. But in 2024, we're getting a huge change on the sneaker. And it's not the heel tab. It's a complete reimagining of the upper of the shoe, switching out the classic nubuck for a tumbled leather. And I know there's a lot of OG heads out there that are not a fan of this change because why would you mess with something that's so perfect like the Air Jordan 4 Breads? But I think for a lot of newer sneakerheads, they might actually prefer this sneaker to the original. And I don't think it's just for the durability and longevity factor of leather versus nubuck, because obviously leather can withstand more weather conditions than nubuck can. If you get nubuck wet, kind of screwed. Leather is one of those materials that you can rock in the rain or the shine. It doesn't crease as badly as nubuck. But I think the main reason that people like this material more is because they just like the way it looks better. Over the last 5 or 10 years, people have started to perceive tumbled leather as a more premium and more expensive material than nubuck, which is actually not the case at all. Nubuck is much more expensive. Then again, the nubuck used on the upper of Air Jordan 4s was probably Durabuck and really not that great of a material whatsoever, but let's be real, neither is this fake tumbled leather. Alright, it might not be fake leather, but the tumbled texture is rolled on. It's not a real texture. So with this release, Jordan Brand is just playing into what's popular right now, tumbled leather. And while it's not the OG Air Jordan 4, I think a lot of people are going to prefer this. I personally like this material better, at least the way this material looks better. It's not because it feels more premium, I'm just used to leather Air Jordan 4s and I like the way that they look in leather. That being said, I still would have preferred a retro of the OG Air Jordan 4 Breads, but this is what we got. And honestly, I'm not mad about it. But let's actually take a little bit of a closer look, and let's start things off on the mudguard of the sneaker. Obviously, as you can see, it comes in black tumbled leather, which has this sort of semi-gloss or I guess almost satin finish to it. As you move up from there to the center of the toe, you've got more black tumbled leather, which actually feels pretty nice to the touch. It's relatively soft. It's kind of your standard, nicer Jordan Brand leather. I actually don't know if this material is more expensive than standard Jordan Brand leather, but it's softer than some of the leather that we've gotten on like recent Air Jordan 4 and Air Jordan 1 releases. Continuing up from there to the eye stay of the sneaker, you've got more tumbled leather, but interestingly enough, this panel actually has a different tumbled texture than the rest of the upper of the shoe. Not sure exactly why they decided to change things up, but the tumbling on the bottom half of the shoe is like smaller tumbling, like the little tumbled accents are tighter. The leather used on the top half of the shoe seems to have a much wider tumbled texture, which I'm not sure exactly why they switched things up. It does kind of give a nice bit of, I guess, textural contrast to the upper of the shoe, and maybe that's why they did it, but it's interesting to see. I'm actually not sure if this is going to be the case for every pair of Air Jordan 4 Breads. One thing that you probably have noticed with Jordan Brand is that not all of their sneakers have the exact same texture. Not all of their shoes even have the same sort of elephant print pattern. A lot of them sort of vary from pair to pair, so it's possible that some pairs may have the same tumbled leather texture over the entire shoe. Some pairs may have this where it's sort of half and half. Other pairs might have like barely any tumbled texture. I really have no idea. Until we see a lot of pairs in hand, we won't know for sure. But assuming that most pairs are similar to this, I don't mind it. It's just an interesting choice. Of course, being an Air Jordan 4, in addition to having these punched lace eyelets in the midfoot of the shoe, you've also got these gray eyelet wing details, which I really like and are one of the most iconic details of the 4. And then weaving through the eyelets, you've got these flat black laces. Beneath the laces on the top of the tongue, you've got that black Air Jordan 4 mesh. And then moving towards the top of the tongue, you've got more of that black tumbled leather. And in the center, you've got your black patch with the red Jumpman and the white flight text. Moving inside the sneaker, you've got the contrasting red color on the back half of the tongue. The rest of the sock liner comes in in cement gray, and then rounding off the inside of the shoe, the insole comes in a bright red with the Nike Air branding printed on the heel in black. But at this point, let's get into sizing and fit. So like I mentioned earlier, I only have this pair of 4s in a size 10, which is a size up from what I usually wear, but again, I actually do have a frame of reference because I have 2 pairs of fire red 4s and they fit just like this pair. So the good news is, if you want to grab a pair of these, I would recommend going true to size because that's how this pair fits me. And honestly, I wouldn't have expected anything different because Jordan Brand is really good with their sizing. If they say something is one size, it tends to be that size and fit true to size. For other brands, that's not always the case. Adidas. The good news is you should be able to grab this shoe true to size and be just fine. Or if you already have pairs of Air Jordan 4s, get the size that you usually get, the size that you're comfortable with. Maybe you have wider feet, you want to go up half a size for a little bit more room. Just depends on what you like, but for most people, I'd say true to size. As far as comfort goes, the BRED 4 Reimagined are just like every other pair of Air Jordan 4s. They are pretty comfortable on foot. I will say that you can enhance the comfort by rocking a pair of Apothecary socks, which if you guys don't know is my sock brand. I personally think we make the best socks out there. I'm a little biased, I'm not gonna lie. And if you want to try any of them for yourself, you can grab them on our website, linked at the top of the description below, apothecary.com, or at your local Zoomies. Continuing back in the shoe, you've got more of that black netting on the midfoot panel of the shoe, and then of course you've got that black and gray wing that acts as the lace eyelets for the top half of the sneaker. And then we move around to the heel of the sneaker, and as you can see, we've got a black heel tab with the gray Nike Air branding. I'm really happy that even though this shoe is a different take or a reimagining of the classic Air Jordan 4 BRED, they didn't change up the heel tab. They kept it the classic Nike Air. A lot of people love that detail. A lot of people like it because it's the classic detail, and I'm glad that they stuck with that rather than switching things up. Then moving down on the sneaker, you get to this black and white midsole with a visible air unit towards the heel, which is classic for the Air Jordan 4. Then moving to the outsole of the sneaker, you've got your herringbone traction pattern. Of course, you've got your stars towards the toe. You've got red hits, white hits, gray hits, and of course your Nike branding in the center of the midfoot. So do the BRED 4 Reimagined live up to the insane amount of hype that have been placed on this release? In my opinion, kinda, yeah. Sure, this shoe is not an OG Air Jordan 4 retro, it's a different take on an OG colorway of the Air Jordan 4s. And while some of the other reimagined sneakers like the Lost and Founds and the Air Jordan 3 Reimagined were really just different colorways of a sneaker, this shoe does something a little bit more dramatic. It completely switches out the material used on the upper of the shoe, but visually, it looks very similar. The only real difference that you see from a distance is the slightly different texture on the upper of the shoe and the fact that this shoe is a little bit shinier than the Nubuck pair, because that pair is very matte because of the material. This shoe has a sort of satin finish to it, so those are really the only two major changes visually on this sneaker. But personally, while I still prefer the OG Air Jordan 4 BREDs, this shoe is very, very clean. It's incredibly easy to rock. I like the fact that this shoe is honestly going to be more durable than the standard Nubuck pair because it won't crack as easily. Creasing will look better on this pair than on that pair, and it won't get destroyed in the rain. Is it going to be sneaker of the year? I don't know, there's like 12 more months left in the year, so we'll have to wait and see, but it's definitely in the running, and I think it'll be in a lot of people's top 10 lists, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's near the top of mine. But hey, at this point, I would love to know your thoughts on the upcoming Air Jordan 4 BRED Reimagined, and whether you're planning to grab a pair of these when they officially release. So make sure to let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you all in the next one.